Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning for those of us who are enjoying the early part of the day, and evening to our participants and presenters in India and other parts of the world where the day is now winding down. Welcome all to this webinar organized by the Indian-Caribbean Society. The Indian-Caribbean Society was envisaged in 2018. Our vision and mission are to unify and advance cultural, economic interests between citizens of India and the Caribbean region. We thought that we can do this by fostering joint and collaborative actions among people, cultural organizations, and businesses. In essence, the society was established to build connections from the past to present economic, social, and cultural environments. The society was initiated by first Texila American University, which is a corporate member of the Guyana Private Sector Commission, interest groups from India, and others from the Caribbean region, mainly from Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Suriname. The idea for the formation of this society was in response to the many requests and queries for ways and means in formulating tangible links between India and its diaspora outside of the mainstream connections. Mainly to create an awareness among the heritage between Indian and Caribbean communities, especially among the younger generation, to promote business, goodwill, friendship, and unity among Indian and our Caribbean communities. All in all, we, organizations, social, business, educational, health, and cultural activities, these are what we organize to achieve our objectives as stated. And to do so, we have created chapters in India, chapters in Suriname, chapters in Jamaica, and in Trinidad and Tobago. These chapters continue to engage regional and international partners, missions, chambers, and government officials to further cause the exchanges between countries involved, as we mentioned. And to moderate today's proceedings, we have the esteemed Mr. Shyam Kumar, the Chief Executive Officer of Texila American University, who brings more than 20 years of experience in the international higher education and offshore medical school sector. Mr. Kumar was instrumental in the establishment of multiple Caribbean medical schools and served in various capacities, including as Chief Financial Officer and Vice President. In his early career days, he also worked with the Bank of America as a business analyst in the wealth and investment management team. Mr. Shyam's experience in higher education includes finance, admission, accreditation, and operations. Mr. Kumar completed his MS from Texas A&M University, USA, and MBA from Bharatiya University, India. He's also a certified accreditation compliance officer from the Distance Education and Training Council of the United States of America. Mr. Shyam Kumar, welcome. It is a pleasure to have you here, sir. And over to you, Mr. Shyam Kumar.
Thank you, Dr. Shah, for the very nice and wonderful introduction. Thank you. So I welcome all of you once again to this interesting discussion on the investment opportunities in Suriname, and for which we have the presence of the Honorable Albert Ramchand Ramdin, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Business and International Cooperation, who will be giving us more information on opportunities available in Suriname for investment. I've been a member of ICS for the last couple of years. I myself believe strongly in the founding principles of ICS, which is to build the connections between the present and future economic, social, and cultural environments. And ICS always try to bring together these kind of discussions with international prominent speakers who can enlighten us, give us more information on opportunities to partner and collaborate. And today's discussion is one such opportunity, which is aimed at building global partnership, which is one of the main founding principles of ICS, the Indo-Caribbean Society. I want to once again invite all of you, all the attendees, all the speakers and the host to today's discussion on investment opportunities in Suriname. Now, I would like to formally introduce our inaugural speaker, Mr. Saju Bhaskar, who is the founder, president of Indo-Caribbean Society and Texila University Consortium. Texila Consortium operates medical schools, universities, and technology companies in different parts of the world, including USA, Africa, India, and Guyana. The development and growth of the group follows its vision of making a positive difference in the communities by nurturing thought leaders. Mr. Bhaskar, a Harvard Business School graduate of the President Management Program, closely oversees the management, operations, and strategic growth of all the ventures. His vision, passion, and commitment, creativity, and inspirational stewardship have steered the organization manifold towards academic innovation, excellence, and global presence. And I also have the opportunity to work closely with him on most of these aspects of his business acumen. I wish to request Mr. Bhaskar to deliver his inaugural address. Mr. Bhaskar, over to you.
Thank you, Shyam, and thank you for the introduction. Okay, His Excellency Albert Ramdin, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Business and International Cooperation, Republic of Suriname, my colleagues, Mr. Shyam, Dr. Sita, honorary members of the Indo-Caribbean Society, attendees, and all the panelists. From humble beginning today, we are proud of having chapters in India, Guyana, Suriname, Jamaica, and Trinidad, as my previous speakers mentioned. Okay, good morning. The Indo-Caribbean Society was established with a mission to build and foster the connections between India and the Caribbean region, which almost dates to 2 centuries. The Connect aims to strengthen the present and the future of our countries economically, socially, and culturally. An example of how I would like to say this is when I came to Guyana the first time to establish a business, we found that a lot of people from East Indian origin in the Caribbean, but the connect between the Caribbean region and India was low. So the Indo-Caribbean Society was born out of the idea to encourage more people from this part of the world to explore probably an unexplored or less explored part of the world, which is the Caribbean region, and also this connection is also could be aided because of the cultural similarities that we might have between Caribbean and India. Right. So ICS was found with the aim to facilitate this, and we encourage growth of interdisciplinary and cross-cultural cooperation, friendship, goodwill between the people of India and the Caribbean region. We intend to host a series of seminars, conferences, and events that would provide a global platform or a forum for exchange and dissemination of ideas, knowledge, best practices, etc., which will help people set up businesses, vice versa. India is probably one of the fastest growing countries in the world, is one of the youngest large economies in the world, and after the COVID situation is expected to be the fastest growing large economy in the world. So India's advanced in every sphere of life, whether it's a mission to Mars or mission to Moon or creating advanced military equipments, manufacturing of anything. For I think today India is the largest exporter of smartphones in the world. India is becoming a manufacturing hub today for the entire world, probably slowly pushing out China in certain spaces. Today's webinar titled Investment Opportunities in the Republic of Suriname is an approach taken by ICS to disseminate information on the investment opportunities available in the Republic of Suriname. This is the second webinar of its kind, the first one being hosted with Guyana Go Invest, which received a fairly decent amount of viewership and interest. So we were contacted by people from other part of the world, to see what the opportunities in Guyana and stuff like that. As soon we intend to have this kind of events in our member countries, and maybe we would also go into physical event and maybe doing an Indo-Caribbean conference, which would help once the pandemic gets over, which help people to get more ideas and physically visit these countries. It should be noted that Indo-Caribbean Society is a non-political, non-partisan, secular, not-for-profit organization. Its only aim is to promote cultural, social, and economic aspirations of Indian and the Caribbean communities. We encourage integration to society at large by organizing, forums, discussions, and all these activities that we do. Even during the testing times of COVID-19, we managed to do multiple events and webinars online. So we ensure that we lived the mission of connecting people across the regions. Suriname, I've been there maybe 2 times. Is a very beautiful country. It's a very safe country, and it's a unique place for international investors. Geographically located in the northeastern coast of Southern America, Suriname has abundance of land and natural resources, cultural diversity, the warmth of the Caribbean, and a constantly improving business climate for investments. I want to encourage investors to explore the many investment opportunities in the Republic of Suriname, which would be explained in detail by His Excellency. So I would once again wish all of you a happy Friday, and hope you'll enjoy this webinar and get benefit out of the information that we are trying to put out here. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much to His Excellency for having consented to be part of this event. Thank you so much. Over to you, Sham.
Thank you, Mr. Bhaskar, for the informative speech. Now, you mentioned about your interesting initial approach to Guyana, where you found it challenging to have access to information. And I hope that today's discussion could throw light to a lot of investors, a lot of listeners who are listening to this program on pathways on how to approach Suriname, if at all you have a proposal, if at all you plan to invest and to seek further investment opportunities. Now, with that said, I would like to get to the core of today's discussion, which is talking about the investment opportunities in Suriname, for which we have a wonderful speaker who is going to enlighten us with information on pathways for investment in Suriname. I would like to formally introduce Honorable Albert Ramchand Ramdin, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Business, and International Cooperation of the Republic of Suriname. Minister Ramdin has over 20 years of experience in international negotiation, multilateral diplomacy, development assistance, public policy development and execution, strategic trade and business facilitation, project management, fundraising, and key expertise in competitiveness. He has worked on institutional reform and restructuring at government, non-government levels, and in the private sector to achieve tangible solutions and results. After completing his second term at the Organization of American States in 2015, he decided to return to Suriname, his birth country, to contribute to the further development of the nation. In that regard, he became the advisor of the newly installed Minister of Foreign Affairs on a multitude of strategic policy matters, and subsequently joined the private sector with an international operating USA-based mining company. Since his return to Suriname, Mr. Ramdin has been involved in several activities ranging from the contributions to the extractive industries transparency initiative, chair of the mining group in the Trade and Business Organization, as well as in the support of political party VHP, Progressive Reformist Party. He is currently the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Business and International Cooperation of the Republic of Suriname. I welcome you, Honorable Albert Ramchand Ramdin, to deliver your keynote address. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much. I thank you very much, Mr. Kumar, and I greet all on the call, Ms. Sita, Mr. Bhaskar, and all others from the Indo-Caribbean Society, as well as other participants. I was looking at the list of participants, attendees, and I see also my good friend Ashok Ramsaran on the call. It's good to have you all. First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate the objectives which were outlined just now with regard to the Indo-Caribbean Society. I welcome those and see that as a good opportunity to connect people, connect the Indian diaspora, especially in the Caribbean, but also beyond that. And I believe certainly the scope of it to include not only the cultural, religious, social elements, but also business is going to be is useful, and I hope that it will be fruitful for all who can contribute to business doing, but also in developing each other's communities and countries. Um, so let me say this before I go into the business opportunities. As you know, and as has been indicated, I'm part of a new government which has taken office last year, July. And this government, led by His Excellency Chandrika Prasad Santokhi, is not only an exponent uh, of the Indian community, but also as leader of the largest political party, appealing to a wide range of other people in the country. We live in a very diverse community as a country. Suriname is possibly one of the most diverse societies in the Western Hemisphere, with people from 5 continents, including the Javanese, which makes us pretty distinct because basically you wouldn't have found them anywhere else. Um, and it brings a diversity with opportunities and also with challenges. And we had those challenges in terms of unity, a peaceful community. It was to the credit of famous leaders from the large two ethnic groups in the 50s and 60s that they were able to find each other and foster a society based on what we call the politics of brotherhood. We all were brought to this country, to Suriname, from elsewhere, not completely at our own will. Certainly the slaves not, the indentured labor under sometimes false circumstances. But both groups had one objective, is to make living, to make a good living, a peaceful living in the new land. So based on that politics of brotherhood and the philosophy of unity and diversity, Suriname has created a very tolerant, highly tolerant society. It's a small community of 600,000 people. So one of the smallest in the Caribbean when it comes to where you will find the Indian diaspora compared to Trinidad, Jamaica, and Guyana, next door Guyana. But still very much highly tolerant, and we today find ourselves in a situation where you have a community which is accepting each other's norms and values, cultures, traditions, and even not only accepts it but also enjoys it as well. I say all this because there are two things necessary for business to thrive. One is a peaceful society, a peaceful community. If you have conflicts, social conflicts in society, businesses will tend to not engage, simply because that's not the best way um, to operate in a country. And the second one is you need a government that is willing to facilitate business, is forward looking and looking towards development rather than purely party politics or even personal politics. And with this new government, I think we have that covered, that we have a government led by a president who is future oriented, has brought support within society with 20 seats, the majority in the coalition. Our approach is a very liberal one as a political party, business friendly, looking towards developing the economy in a way where Surinamese interests are secured and without ignoring the objectives of any business is to make profit, but to do that in such a way that both the country and the entrepreneur will profit. So with those two things, you have basically the foundation of an attractive environment to invest in. Those are two positive things, but I want to mention some negatives, and that we'll be able to improve on that over time, and we are in a hurry on that. Is the business environment itself needs to be improved in terms of facilities, in terms of the investment code, in terms of the ease of doing business. Not all is in place. I'll be frank and honest with you. We still have work to do there, as many other countries do. But I want to be clear on that. It doesn't mean that investing in Suriname is not possible. It just means that an early investor now has great benefits towards the future, because that's a commitment which will pay off in due time, in due course. So we are working on improving our ease of doing business in Suriname. We are not at the most attractive level on the ease of doing business index of the World Bank, but given the fact that it's at that level, we will be able to climb on that level to a better position. We are convinced of that. Two is we need to modernize, update our investment legislation, which has been dispersed over a couple of pieces of legislation. Before the end of the year, we'll have a more comprehensive and clear, modern, updated investment law, and that will provide securities both to national and international investors. And I want to stress this point. We consider national investors equally important as international investors. And that's the security we want to give to the domestic market as well. In terms of opportunities, let me mention a couple of things which are more traditional, which are in the current environment, and then I'll look at towards the future as well. In the current environment, mining is possibly for the large scale investor is mining a very prospective area. Mining in terms of gold, bauxite is part of that paradigm, but needs to be redeveloped after 100 years. Alcoa, they left 110 years, and now we need to redevelop in West Suriname. I'll come back to that. I'm in Dubai right now, which indicates our interest in building bridges with business centers in the world. Dubai is one of them. I just finished a talk with the fourth largest aluminum producer, bauxite processor in Dubai. So we are very fast in making those connections. But the mining sector is one, which is really an opportunity for large-scale investors. Agriculture remains an attractive sector for investors, especially in the context of providing food security. Many countries do not have the same capability of fertile land mass like Suriname and Guyana, and these two countries can provide that. So for those countries who are looking, and those companies who are looking to de-risking their security situation in terms of food, Suriname, and I can speak for Guyana as well, provide great opportunities. Apart from the fact that investing in Suriname and Guyana in the agriculture sector provides a domestic, and I speak regional domestic market of approximately $5 to $6 billion US import of foodstuff in the Caribbean. So these two countries have an enormous potential to fill that gap in the Caribbean alone. Those two are more or less the traditional ones. If you include into that also tourism, although Suriname has not developed mass tourism, and most likely we don't want that as well, but selected targeted tourism to maintain the level our natural environment. I think tourism still has opportunity for growth in terms of hotels, in terms of the spin-off which comes with tourism in terms of transportation, tourism services, and so on. And then there is the fisheries and shrimp export. Although I must say that we have reached more or less a ceiling of permits to be granted, given the rules and regulations on fishing. But there is a opportunity there for export to certain markets, in especially North America and Europe. So those are the traditional sectors I would highlight: mining, agricultural, tourism, and fishing. Where we're looking at in the future, and I'm speaking about the near future, time span of between 4 to 10 years, is major investment opportunities in infrastructure, roads, bridges, utilities, the energy sector, especially when oil and gas starts, like in Guyana, in our case in 2025, and Guyana started a year or so ago. The benefits are there, but it will bring a lot of spin-offs. And it may well be that both countries will not be able to provide all the capabilities which are required. So you will need investors or expatriates or the diaspora to come in. And I think for both countries, there is great opportunity there. But in the context of oil and gas, a lot of spin-offs will take place. I spoke earlier about West Suriname, which has abundance in bauxite deposits. Although it's of a low grade, President Santoki and President Irfan Ali just last week agreed that we would develop jointly, and this is a new element in the Caribbean business environment, is when two countries at the highest levels decide to strategically collaborate. And this is to develop Berbice on the Guyanese side, where there is bauxite of a high degree, and on the Suriname side, in West Suriname, the Nikeri side, with the gas coming from the oil exploration, bringing that to land, to shore, it will develop the bauxite industry tremendously. But it will create a conglomerate of industries with high technology, high energy, and enormous jobs, apart from the income that is generated from all these industries. So that's a potential strategic economic complex, industrial complex, which can be developed in the west of Suriname. And here, both countries, Guyana and Suriname, will benefit from it. Both regions are underdeveloped, and it will attract a lot of investors, but also people. This is what we call the beyond the borders, beyond the national borders, strategic economic cooperation in the Guyana Shield. And that will include, in due course, also Brazil, where we can jointly provide energy to the grid and develop infrastructure, and with that create in the northern part of Brazil, which is closer to Paramaribo and Georgetown than to Sao Paulo, to create a sub-regional integration process or cooperation process. That is looking forward to 2060, but in my view, investments and investment strategies should look very far ahead, even to the post-oil and gas, because both countries, and Suriname has taken that position as well, is we're looking into transitioning into a green economy in due course. And for that, you will need to have a strategy now already to use the current or the future revenues for Suriname to lay down a foundation for green development. So the future is in oil and gas, but also in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the spin-offs of cheap energy development through the gas pipelines, and of course in oil. And another area where I believe in the future, in the near future, we will see opportunities is in the area of environment. And this sounds a bit contradicting, because on the one hand, we're developing our carbon industry. On the other hand, we're speaking about natural environment. Let us be for a moment selfish, in the sense that we will need the oil and gas to develop on the short term. And I know that there will be a decline at some point in oil need, but it will take possibly another 20, 30 years before that starts happening. By that time, we should have laid down the foundation for sustainable economic growth upon which we can build new economies. And then if you look totally to the future, there are a couple of other sectors which are relevant. Three of them are mentioned to you. One is in ICT, because, and somebody mentioned that already, because of the strategic location of Suriname, we can build a strong ICT hub in Suriname. Two is in the banking sector, which will require strong, large investments in our internet capabilities. But given the location, we can be a hub for that. In terms of supply chain, Suriname can be an hub as well. I spoke here with Emirates in terms of their connection with South America, and it was clear to them that the future is in terms of traffic to South America. In terms of supply chain, two things. One is the airline side, but not so much as a point-to-point destination, but in terms of air transit traffic. And the other one is in terms of processing industries in economic free zones, and then providing the larger Latin American market, which is approximately 600 million persons with a growing middle class from out of Suriname. So that's much more the future, which will provide more sustainable benefits and employment after 20, 30 years. The key thing in our development strategy is one is our goal is to expand markets. Suriname as a community is far too small. The Caribbean as a community is far too small. What went wrong in the past couple of decades is, and that goes for almost every single Caribbean country, is the focus on the larger markets in North America and in Europe. But in the meantime, not many have survived that opportunity simply because of the rules and regulations which apply to exports to those countries, apart from the fact that the preferential arrangements came to an end for bananas, for rice, and you name it. But there is a market right next door, which is Central America with 60 million. If you take the wider Caribbean, it's 200 million. And if you take the whole Latin America, it's 600, 700. And there is a growing demand because there is a growing middle class as well. So we don't need to look far away in terms of our supply chains or expansion of our markets. But that requires a specific strategy to build on. I believe I mentioned already that Suriname is a small country and we'll need to build our capacity, because one of the things we realize that one of the most stringent limited factors for growth will be our labor market, our labor force, in terms of quantity as well as in terms of quality. And for that, local content development is being put in place, but that even will not be sufficient, because if you speak of all these industries coming on stream in a period of 30, 40 years, you'll need to start now with your education system to be targeted targeting that development. We have a very traditional education system which needs to be updated and possibly totally overhauled to make it suitable for these developments. But also the readiness to bring people in from other countries, because our labor market is too shallow, too small. We lack certain capacities, so we should have an open policy towards population growth. And I think that limitation can be resolved if countries work together. That's why President Santokhi, President Irfan Ali decided on something else strategically important. Many people have not seen it as yet, but it's a critical decision they took to see both countries, Guyana and Suriname, basically as one labor market, which is a strategic move toward making it possible for Surinamese companies to benefit from economic development in Guyana and vice versa. And normally it would be within our borders. That's not the case anymore. So we're looking at the Guyana Suriname market as almost like a single economic space, which again is very strategic, and we'll see how that works out in the coming years. But with all these things coming on stream, I believe that there are great opportunities in Suriname, because you have a great government who is business friendly, and a government which is looking forward not 5 years, 5 to 10 years, but 20, 30 years. We're looking at a vision 2060, which is being developed. We're looking at innovative ways of expanding our capabilities through strategic cooperation with neighboring countries. I have spoken about Guyana, but equally that goes for French Guyana, which basically is France, and with Brazil. So the whole Guyana Shield in itself can become literally a powerhouse in the world. And I'll end with saying this, that fact will draw some challenges in terms of balancing our foreign policy in such a way that we don't become dependent on one or two regions in the world. And secondly, keeping in mind that wealth, and certainly the wealth we are talking about, will attract a lot of insecurity. And we have to be careful about that. And both countries and also Brazil, we have engaged on making sure that while we're developing these resources, these new opportunities, our national securities are not threatened or challenged by parties which have an interest in doing so. So it's a complex process, but I think in strategic terms, the Guyanas in general will become in 10, 15 years, certainly, if not the first, surely the second center for politics, for economic development, and for investments. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share this with you. If there are questions, I'm happy to take them. It's as I said, I'm very honest. There are things which we still need to do, but the majority of my story is a positive one, going forward with great opportunities for all investors and individuals who want to be part of this process by coming to Suriname to set up business. It doesn't need to be large investors only. It can be also small subcontractors who can provide opportunities or who can benefit from the opportunities in terms of local content development, in terms of the spin-offs of the oil and gas industry and in the other sectors. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Ramdin. And we understand that you are in Dubai. So thank you for being available late evening. I suppose it's around 6:30, 7 p.m. in Dubai now, around that time. So thank you again for being with us late. I do have some follow-up questions, and so do some of our participants. But just some information for people on the group. If you have any questions, please feel free. You can put a message in the chat, and I will be more than happy to take up their questions with the minister. With that, I already have a couple of questions, and I see one interesting message from Bram Ramphal, who says that I'm interested in developing a high-tech park in Suriname. Please connect me with the government departments and so on. So, Brian, we will do that. We'll facilitate it. We'll share the information, vice versa, to the ministry, as well as we'll share you their contacts. But I do have a follow-up question on that. Since Brian is specifically asking about or talking about high-tech park in Suriname, what is the technology infrastructure in Suriname, or how easy it is, which is a challenge often seen in Caribbean. I myself have traveled across Caribbean looking at investment opportunities, and technology has always been a challenge in the region. So how is Suriname prepared for this kind of a development?
As I indicated earlier, we need to have the right mindset to attract these businesses. And regretfully, a large segment of our societies is not used to these. Let me put it this way. A lot of Caribbean economies, including Suriname, are happy with what they have. What you need in countries like Suriname and Guyana now is a group of people that should say, I'm not happy with what we have. We can build more, and be ready to take the risk to do so. But in both instances, and I can speak for Suriname, in my view, the business environment is conservative and risk averse. And that has to change. So if you speak about high-tech park development, this government will be happy to see what we need to do to facilitate. But in terms of looking for partners in Suriname, you will find one or two, three, four maybe. But the majority of the innovative presence or the offer will come from outside. You have the government on your side. So those who want to engage on that, we certainly want to look at that. Because although we don't have everything in place, we don't need to have everything in place to start working on certain things. If you're going to wait until everything is 100% ready, then possibly you'll be last in the line. And that's not what you want. So risk-taking means also coming into in a space which is not complete as yet. So I invite certainly those industries to indicate their interest and how they want to operate and what they need. We'll seek to facilitate that. A government has certain assets to its availability. Finance is not one of them, certainly not in our circumstance, but I'm sure that that is often not the problem. The problem is the facilitation in terms of the legal, the permits, and maybe land, but that is not an issue. And through FDI, we are setting up a new agency, a trade promotion and investment agency, which will be like a one-stop window for all these investors. So we look forward to those proposals, and through the ministry, we can provide you with the necessary details and the intake forms.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ramdin. ICS, as well as Texila American University, having our base in Guyana, we've been closely watching the partnership with Guyana and Suriname, and we are really excited about the possibilities of opportunities that might arise from these relationships. So thank you for all these initiatives from Guyana as well as Suriname for this wonderful partnership. You mentioned briefly about this trade council, which could essentially be a single window system for investors to maybe submit applications, submit proposals. Would you elaborate a little bit more on that, on how, if I'm an investor, I have a proposal in my hand, let's say in energy, do I need to go and knock on 5 different doors, or is this office facilitate or able to facilitate my requirements, my requests, my proposals, and take it to the right departments and give me a feedback on what needs to be done?
That's exactly the purpose of the Trade and Investment Promotion Agency. The way it operates will operate. We are in the final stage of setting this up. The way we envisage it is simply that any investor, any foreign investor, but also national investors, can register at this agency. There is an intake form which is a 2-page form which they need to fill in with the basic information. From there on, there is if it is not complete, we ask for additional information. And then from there on, it goes through a due diligence process. Once we have completed that process, it goes to the appraisal committee, and the appraisal committee will test whether this is an offer which fits the development policy, the investment policy of Suriname. If that's the case, it's assigned to an account manager, and the account manager is a one-stop person. That person will take it from there in terms of all the specific requirements, whether it's land, whether it's specific permits to build or construct, whether it's imports, and apply at that point also the investment code in terms of facilities. So those investors will not need to go to 3-4 ministries. We'll facilitate through this account manager all what is required for the person to be able to operate at some point in time. That's it basically. And of course, some of the things are legal or within the legislation. You need to go to a notary, a lawyer, and all of those things, but that will be facilitated through this account manager. And once it's done, then that company can operate on its own further, and maybe some backstopping if necessary, but basically that's how it will operate. It's a short procedure to make the bureaucracy also less.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. We have another 10 more minutes to go in this discussion. So if any of the participants have any questions, please feel free to put in the chat message, and I'll be more than happy to take it up. However, even beyond this discussion, if you have you want more information, questions, and that's a whole idea of ICS is facilitate these kind of partnerships, these kind of discussions. So you have all the contact information. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to connect you with the right team, right individual, right office to take up discussions forward. I have another question from Lieutenant Colonel Terrace. Does the small labor market extend to private security, and is there room for inclusion of foreign in this sector in the short term? I'm assuming the question is all about are you attracting foreign investors in setting up private security companies in Suriname? Is that an option?
What I would suggest here, we do have domestic private security firms, and they provide services to different entities and government as well as private owned companies. But what I have noticed, having worked for a multinational, is that certain standards apply which the international companies will need to comply with, and which they require. So I think there is room, absolutely room, for private security firms who operate internationally and are certified by multinationals to work together with a local partner. That is what I would suggest, because as you mentioned earlier on, you need to work with local partners. That's what I would advocate, to develop also the local content. But it will, I know that the law allows for foreign companies to operate in Suriname, private security firms. The better way is to enter into a partnership with a local security firm with international standards, and that will possibly give you a better entrance into the market when it comes to acquiring business from especially multinational companies. And at this point, you have a lot of international companies operating who are looking for companies that comply with international standards. Newmont, IAMGold, the oil companies, 6 or 7 of them. So all of them require that. It's not only for the private security firms for security, but in general, it can be housing. It can be all kinds of other services, transport, where they require certain standards because of the liability clauses, which they have to comply with internationally.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. And we have another 7 more minutes to go before we wind up this discussion. I do have a follow-up question on this investment. one key question that we ourselves are invested heavily in foreign countries, Guyana, Zambia, different countries. And one question as investors always comes to our mind is, what kind of fiscal incentives would the government provide if we are to invest heavily on a project in a country? So can you throw some light on that opportunities?
As I mentioned before, our investment facilities are spread over different pieces of legislation. We have now issued a consultant to incorporate all these pieces of legislation in one investment code, which will include fiscal facilities. And I don't want to preempt that discussion on which fiscal facilities will be offered. At the moment, we do have import-free of taxes on production goods. There are tax holidays, accelerated depreciation as well. So there are some tax holidays you can get also in terms of getting land available for production purposes. But all of that is being reviewed because often it's not only the fiscal facilities which are relevant, it's also the other legal opportunities which can be provided. So I can come back to you on this much more in detail once we have the investment code published and approved in Parliament.
Okay, thank you, Minister. I have another question from Sherwin. Do you want to take the call? I see that you just got a call.
No,
mute for a minute.
I will call back.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Sherwin. For companies looking for partners, are there any organizations that are in the best position to support this? Or do you facilitate local partners if I have a proposal that need local partners?
Yes. Just connect with the agency at this point, FDI, the International Business Unit, and the Foreign Ministry, and then we'll facilitate the connections with local partners.
Okay.
That's not a problem.
Okay. Probably one of my last questions is there any restrictions on foreign nationals buying property in Suriname? Restrictions, and plus, I've seen in some of the Caribbean countries there's an alien land holding license. In some countries it's exempted, depending on the business. Some countries it's very expensive to get the license. So can you share some information on that opportunity?
This is one of the key issues I know for many investors. They can acquire land under certain conditions from the government, but it's not in ownership. It's kind of a land lease structure for a certain amount of years for production purposes. And when that period is over, then the land goes back to the government. But availability or getting land for their production activities, that should not be a problem. Most of the companies, multinationals, all have that construction. It's more a land lease construction than land ownership. Foreigners cannot purchase land as such to have in ownership. I hope that answered, but it's not a limitation in terms of operating in Suriname.
Okay, thank you, Minister Ramdin. I think we are almost at the end of the session. I have one last question for you, and then we will probably wind up the question. As foreign investors ourselves, there are certain industries which requires skilled labor from outside of the country. We operate universities and medical schools in different parts of the world, and one of the challenges we face is to get doctors and qualified professionals to work with us. Often we see challenges in terms of work permit, immigration formalities. How is Suriname positioned for this kind of investors, this kind of business opportunities brought in by foreign businesses?
Expats are operating in Suriname, certainly with the large-scale multinational companies, based on agreements which we enter into. There is a requirement, often put in a schedule in the contracts, in the agreements, of developing local content while they operate there. In most of the cases, it's not a problem. Once it is in the agreement, expats will receive their work permits without any problem. I know that, for instance, with Newmont, with the gold mining company, there is a schedule whereby senior management, within 3 years, you need to have it reduced in terms of expats to a certain number, and that continues until most of the senior management is Surinamese. That will continue. That's part of local content development. But certainly for certain jobs, you don't find Surinamese, so expats will always be part of that labor market, labor force. That in itself is not a challenge, I believe. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a too shallow, too narrow labor force in terms of skill set and quantity that we can afford, or the luxury of refusing people to come in and refusing investments because of that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ramdin. It's been a wonderful experience talking to you, knowing more about opportunities in Suriname. I hope this provided a platform for the government as well as some of the people who are interested in investing in Suriname, an opportunity to connect and ask more questions, know more about Suriname. And we will continue to facilitate this even after beyond the boundaries of this phone call or Zoom session. We have a team dedicated for handling this. Any queries, any inquiries that we get to our end, we'll pass it on to you. And we hope to be a catalyst for growth and development in this Indo-Caribbean region. And we'll definitely take an extra effort in developing opportunities in Suriname.
Yeah, feel free. And in closing, let me say this. I also appreciate the opportunity. Feel free to connect with our people on the ground in Suriname, but also in a couple of months' time, when we have the investment code, I'm always prepared to take part in another webinar to explain what the main elements are of that new investment code. And by that time, we'll have the investment agency also running.
Thank you. Before I wind up, I also want to thank Mr. Bhaskar. I know it's pretty late in India now for being with us, being available late evening. Dr. Shah, thank you again for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Shyam, and thank you, His Excellency Dr. Albert Ramdin. Thank you so much for being part of this. And next time you do visit India, please do visit our head office in South India in Coimbatore, and we will definitely try to make a visit to you when we are in Suriname.
Thank you.
Thanks for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good day and a happy Friday to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Happy Friday.